Good afternoon, everybody in Asia. We are glad to be with you today through Hospitality Talks. Considered one of the largest continental economies in the world, Asia continues to rise in the global market. Tourism and hospitality industry has played a significant role given the rapid socioeconomic changes occurring in the region. Though not new to short-term shocks, COVID-19 pandemic has definitely shifted the landscape for hospitality sector. The impact of SARS in 2003 was comparatively less severe on hotel performance, and a lot of the cities rebounded strongly. Hotels in the region are definitely poised to recover from this pandemic and generally speaking have fared better than their counterparts in Europe and Americas. As we refocus on recovery, we need to take time to review business strategies and position for the eventual upturn. The hotel landscape will inevitably look different when the dust settles. So an understanding of the evolving demand trends, efficiencies, and innovations will all be essentials for the future. Which country will recover at what pace depends on a number of factors. Our panelists today will help us understand the future of tourism and hotel development in this vibrant and diverse region. I am Abid Butt. I'm here with my co-host, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. Sam.
Thank you, Abid. And everyone, a warm welcome to our episode today. I see that we have a number of viewers who have joined us live for this show. So please write down in the comment where you're viewing from so we can recognize you and give you a shout out. But in regards to this episode, it has a special feeling about, we are talking about Asia since both Abid and me, we had the chance to work part of our careers there. So it's really nice to learn about what are the developments and also particularly forward-thinking strategies, how a region that I always knew that is always bouncing back and what are the steps it's moving forward now. So Abid, if it's all right with you, we could bring everyone to the scene and bring the panelists for the discussion.
Yes, please. So, Sam, today we are joined by Michael Piro from Vietnam. He's a real estate professional and serves as Chief Operating Officer of Indochina Capital and CEO of the newly launched brand Wink Hotels. He has a long history of real estate development in Vietnam, including luxury hotels and branded residences. We also have a chemical engineer turned hotelier in Manoj Mehta, who is CEO of Naked Group since 2012 and has been key in expanding Naked's footprint throughout China, starting with a small bed and breakfast type of place. So we're thrilled to have him with us and look forward to hearing about outlook on China. And last but certainly not least, an author in Bill Barnett, who has authored 4 books on travel, property, and hospitality. He's founder and managing director of Asia-based C9 Hotelworks, which is an advisory firm in hospitality, tourism, and real estate sectors. Gentlemen, welcome to Hospitality Talks. Thanks for taking the time. So if, Sam, if it's okay, we will have Bill start us out. Bill, thanks for taking the time and being with us. Your knowledge about Asian markets is going to be pivotal in this discussion. Talk a little bit about how the destinations have responded to pandemics, some markets that might be doing better than the others, and any unique initiatives that these markets might have launched. Bill.
Yeah, I think certainly, who knew a year later we're still sitting here in front of the Zoom or whatever, in front of the computer, still 1 year later. I can't imagine, if we would have gone back a year ago and tried to think we'd still be doing this. Yeah, well, I guess we are. So here we are today. I think, I've been in Asia. I'm much younger than I look, but I've been around about 35 years in Asia. So we've seen 1997. We saw what happened after 9/11. We saw after SARS, after the global financial crisis. So I think COVID certainly is a bit different because sitting here in Thailand, we're feeling COVID more right now than we did 1 year ago. So I think there's always that time difference, but there's also kind of a lag sometimes in things that happen in this side of the world. We're experiencing something much different. I think something which is a little different than, say, going back to 1997 is there is more liquidity in the market. I think that's something which we're seeing. In 1997, overnight, you saw the currency flip. You saw the banks were just on the edge. There wasn't liquidity. And I think that's kind of an interesting mix because with that liquidity, there's a lot more hope and people have been hanging on to see how they're going to get through this as well. So I think that's quite interesting. Asia per se, we'd always like to say we would be the first markets to rebound because we sit within about a third of the world's global population. But we're still not seeing these things which we've been thinking, the trajectory of the recovery is not clear yet here in Asia. We can always say the travel bubble. Here in Thailand, we thought all of a sudden that India would come back to be one of the leading markets first back when Thailand reopened. And today we see India as a total disaster. So again, everything we know changes day by day. And I think that's really interesting. There's so much volatility. But I think, when I look back at how we learned to travel again, I go back to 9/11. And in 9/11, we understood how to take our shoes off at the airport. We learned how to do protocols, but there were baby steps in travel. I think that's something that we're understanding is the trajectory of recovery is not overnight. We're seeing in all these markets that we're going to see a slower pace of recovery. Certain markets, perhaps Singapore, have been self-sustained because of initiatives there. I think something when we look across Asia for most, when you look at hotels, the human resource certainly is a hotel's biggest cost, in terms of that and electricity. And when we look at what's happened in Australia with JobKeeper, when we look at the Singapore government subsidizing the hotel business, these have been good things, which were certainly with the go to travel in Japan, where there was the incentives last year to spur domestic travel. These programs were quite important. But when we go to countries like Thailand, we go to countries like Indonesia, it's been much more freeform. I mean, here in Thailand, where I sit, we saw the government have short-term benefits for Social Security, for domestic travel, but there's been no sustainable government policy. And I think that's kind of the disconnect. In Asia, certainly we can say in most of the markets, except for, say, Hong Kong, Singapore, we see the private sector outpace the public sector in terms of action and growth. So I think when we look at a trajectory going back, it's going to be the private sector which will do that first. But I think certainly it's an interesting time for us here. And that's kind of the landscape we're seeing today. Abid?
That's fantastic, Bill. Thank you for that. And there are definite differences from all the last downturns, economic downturns we experienced. I remember when the currency crisis occurred, it wiped out a lot of the organizations overnight. Well, this time it has been a public health issue and an enemy that we cannot see. We try to fight an enemy that we can't see, and we don't like fighting it. And it's really lingering on for a long time. You talked about India, and unfortunately, my heart goes out to folks in India because it is a real challenge. And there have been these hotspots all around the world, including U.S. U.S. has gone through a very tough times, but it's great to hear that different jurisdictions have responded in attempts to save the travel and tourism sector because it is one of the last employers. So some of the new emerging trends, now some of these trends might not be applicable as we come out of the pandemic, but do you see any emerging trends in Asia Pacific relative to travel and tourism? And what would that how would that translate to hotels?
I think certainly from the top, when we see Asia has been such an area of growth, leading the globe in terms of pipeline, we've seen many of the global hotel giants, people like Accor, people like Intercontinental, we've seen them retract, certainly in terms of their Asian bases, their Asian corporate offices. I think that's going to be a defining trend, which is going to really dog this market for the next decade, because we've seen these regional offices or these Asia-based offices really slash for hotel development. We've seen where their full operating teams now really pare down and say, we're going to control things from London, we're going to control things from the US, we're going to control things. So there's a decentralization again towards the hotel industry back to their corporate headquarters and using these as satellites. I think maybe two outcrops of that is what's going to happen to the relationships. In Asia, perhaps relationships are more important for hotel owning companies together with hotel operators. And that's really been slashed and burned right now. So I don't understand what's going to happen without those relationships going forward. And I think we're also going to see a rise of white label, certainly where hotel owners are now saying, well, if you don't have a large corporate office, let's, give us a franchise, give us the brand to manage, and we'll do it ourselves. So I think those are two dynamic trends. We're going to see third-party management rising. We're going to see perhaps the end of the relationship type philosophy we see in Asia. So I think we're going to have a lot of movable chairs here as well. Another trend we're seeing is in transactions. And there's a lot of expectations about stress, de-stress. Every week I get the call, I want to buy a cheap hotel. I want to buy a cheap hotel. One thing that hasn't happened is we're not seeing private equity groups able to come in at debt. There's not cheap deals. There's not mountains of hotels falling over and say, please buy my hotel. That was kind of the expectation. And again, an important part why there's not as much transaction activity as we would have thought there is because, again, banks aren't willing to also support these things. And if you're not buying at bargain basement prices, how do you do a deal without debt to hit double-digit IRRs? I think that's certainly important. And perhaps the saddest thing I think from the industry right now on a downturn is what's going to happen to our human resources. We've taken out so much staff, and who's going to want to be in the hotel business going forward? And I think something that Asia is going to have to learn is we were already getting there in terms of many of the economies saying that Western practices, labor is getting more and more expensive. And I think Asia has to now mimic the West in terms of practices for human capital. But how are we going to attract people to this business after they've been stunned and laid off from their hotel jobs? How do we get the good people back in the age of YouTube and everything else?
Yeah, lots of challenges, Bill, and thank you for bringing up the transaction side of it. I guess lenders don't want to take these assets back because it's not like they can do something to turn the revenues faucets on. It is a public health thing, so they don't want to take it on their balance sheet. So it's everybody's sort of kicking the can down the street. Do you see transactions picking up towards the end of the year? Do you think there would be possibly more distress and meeting of the minds between bid-ask spread?
I think we're now through 1 year, and I think that I think our darkest days in many countries are ahead of us. To be quite frank, and I think that's going to unleash some more stress. We've seen transactions. We saw the 4 Points down in Sydney transact. We're aware of 3 or 4 other portfolios coming to market. So we're kind of after a year now, we're seeing some stabilization, but we're seeing it's not total distress, but we're seeing some assets move through the market. We're starting to see some orderly movement of that. So again, it's not going to be a wholesale people throwing down their cards and saying, I've got to sell, but certainly we are going to see the business of transactions coming back in the market, and groups which have a strong balance sheet or are buying an equity, maybe want to buy and then refinance 2 or 3 years from now. But it's the big players who are looking at this. It's not a small players game right now.
And in Asia, generally speaking, it's really the high net worth individual and families that have traditionally owned the assets, unlike institutional money in some of the other markets where the transactions are far more frequent. Asia has been pretty stable throughout. You talked about the larger brands and larger organizations that last year, because everybody was in survival mode, they might have let a lot of their support staff go. How would this pandemic impact the owner and operator relationship? And do you think without that support network, a lot of these management companies would survive?
I think that I think they'll survive, but I think it'll be in a different form. I think it's transition. I think the the pandemic's accelerated trends which were going to happen anyway, and I think that's clear. It's not the pandemic which has created this situation whereby in Asia a lot of hotel owners know how to operate properties. You go to Europe, you go to the States, you've got white labels operating efficiently because they, in many cases, do better jobs than the operators do. And again, people have learned how to operate their hotels. I think in terms of, I was talking to somebody from a large brand. They said basically all we can do right now is give you a sign with a hotel name on it and hook you up to distribution. And really distribution, there isn't any right now. So that's about all you're going to get. So that's the reality of it right now. And there's just too many hotels in the system. So I think we have to work through that. I think it's unfair to say the brands are going to fall over, but to me, the interesting dialogue is what's going to happen to the OTAs. The OTAs, you look at the capital base, somebody like Booking.com and these type of companies, are these going to become hotel players in the future? And the relative, hotel companies are growing, really shrinking in terms of their significance, in terms of their balance sheets. I think that's going to be interesting at play in terms of, are we going to see more consolidation? But I think it's going to be done on a global basis. We've seen a few regional hotel deals being done, but nothing large yet. So I think that shakeup is yet to come.
Okay, and Bill, I'll turn it over to Sam here in a minute. But you talked about the human capital side of things. Of course, a lot of people at all different ranks and all different positions were furloughed and let go, and it's been a year. Some of them might have moved on to other industries and might never come back. Even people that do come back are going to have to be reacclimated and retrained back into the hospitality sector, because it's nearly been a year since we were actively engaged at this point. What do you think that landscape looks like, and what is ahead of us as we focus on recovery relative to human capital?
I think there's going to be an incredible hangover. I think owners are now going to say, when's the next wave coming? This could happen again. There's going to be a real hesitancy to simply open the doors and man up again. I think certainly there is going to be, it's offered a great generation now for the Asian generation to take over as general managers as well. It's created huge opportunities country by country to say, finally, maybe perhaps we don't need expatriate managers. Maybe we can do it ourselves. And I think that's an interesting thing. But certainly multi-skilling and everything else, this was in the works anyway. Asia was living on borrowed time in terms of efficiency. Again, your room rates aren't going to grow at 5-10% year in, year out, year in, year out, but your labor costs in Asia have risen at hyperinflation rates. So again, I think it was something which was going to be accelerated pre-pandemic as well. But there's lots of questions in terms of what's going to make hotels more efficient. What's going to, when are hotels, what other business in the world has morning briefings except the Army and hotels, right? You tell anybody from another industry. So maybe it is time. It's a wake-up call for this industry to perform as well.
Well, thank you for that, Bill. I'm going to turn it over to Sam, and I'll be back with you in a moment. Sam.
Yes, thank you, Abid. And Bill, great to see you again after all these years. And my question is that you talk about the new generation general managers of hotels, hoteliers, and so on. One of the things that you are promoting is that don't follow the herd. I see that on your website, and it's a great sentence, but how do you see the new generation of hoteliers, the Thai hoteliers particularly, doing something a little bit unique and are innovative in promoting their hotels and bringing customers without relying on third-party aggregators, for instance?
I mean, the one thing we found, certainly in markets, even in Asia, again, pre-pandemic, that some hotels perform better than others simply because they have better management. There's a function of management again. The guys with the ideas who don't have outlets, who have bars and restaurants, the guys who create value through that, they're outperforming. I think there is a value to management again, and this idea of chain and standardization is going out of the system where there's entrepreneurial standpoint. You don't manage, you don't take a 1-year business plan and try to implement this because you realize your business changes every day, your landscape changes every day. So I think they have to be more proactive as a management. And I think something that bothers me about the chains is if you talk to somebody who works for a large chain during the crisis, they're reforecasting their hotel every third day. They spend 50% of their time reforecasting with corporate responsibilities instead of running the business. And I think that perhaps is a wake-up call too when you look at chain-run hotels and say, are you really going to outperform coming out of this as well? And I think managers, it's a great time because you have a case to be reinvented. You go straight to market with social media instead of making it 1-year advertising plans. You're dynamic in what you do, and you can see results or you can see failures right away. So I think that's completely different.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in digital transformation, and one of the things that we are doing here with Abid is reaching out the hospitality community through these kind of live shows. But I'm still like to see more how hotels could take in charge of their own destiny a little bit more than what they're doing, and rather than relying on third parties, and be active on the digital marketing. Any thoughts of, is there someone who is doing this more than ever before, or is it still the same good old, let's rely on the OTAs?
It's a striking point with me. Okay, so in 2019, I traveled 200 days a year, whatever. 200 days that year, I would have stayed in probably 70 or 80 hotels. Okay, for the past year, how many hotels have I heard from? 0, right? Okay, so these hotels had a customer, and they haven't reached out. And as soon as this epidemic ends, they're going to go out and throw down their pants, shut their pants down, and make cheap rates, not understanding that they had loyal customers. And I think that's the one thing, which is the glaring thing that says to me, is why don't you simply go to your customer base? You had customers, work to that base. Destinations, you had customers. I live in Phuket. We have millions of customers who have come here over the years. Don't simply throw down rate, but use the power of the connection. It's not about the product, it's about the people. And I think that to me is the one that resonates really sorely. I mean, I came the other day, I was in a hotel, and all the staff came out and thanked me. They gave me some ice cream. I remember those things. It's those small acts of kindness. We forget what hospitality, we're in the hospitality business, not the hotel business. And hospitality is the human connection. I think that's what's kind of lost in our trade right now.
Yeah, that's well said. I was in preparation for this episode, I was reading up a little bit what people are talking about in Thailand at the moment. And there's someone who's really trying to lure the rich into Thailand for their second homes or winter holidays, or investing into homes. Or is there some, because I remember hearing this days when I was there, that bringing the high spending customers. Is there something that is now happening in Thailand where they are making it more easier for people to invest into the country and stay longer, and etc.?
I think in Phuket, Phuket, we've got about $3 to $4 billion of high-end real estate anywhere. So we see what we're seeing, I think, is a chance of urbanization. We see people want to get out of Hong Kong. Maybe they want to get out of Bangkok with the air pollution. Maybe they get tired of the many issues in Hong Kong politically right now. They want a quieter life, so it's a lifestyle choice. I think, again, that wasn't because of the pandemic. It was already pre-pandemic, where people wanted to prioritize lifestyle. That, to me, is going to continue on this process, because people now from COVID are saying what's important to them. Health is about the well-being of their family. They've reconnected. I think certainly we see that continued trend where perhaps people are moving to a slower lifestyle. And the main thing is working from home. We've all learned to, we're all sitting at home today saying, this is how we're communicating. So maybe that works. Maybe this is all changing as well. So certainly I think where your lifestyle is, those who have the money to travel and live in exotic places, certainly that's going to continue.
Yeah. My final question before I hand over to Abid is, you mentioned that there's a concern, of course, of our people who had been laid off or furloughed, and that they never come back to the industry, or they are discouraged of coming back to the hospitality. Are there any sort of ideas like a service, promoting service excellence certifications, or bringing people with some branded service products to entice people either to come back to the hotel to work, or if they're working in the hotel, that this gives them a chance to kind of brush up their skills and become better at their providing the service. Comes quite easily. It's more maybe the efficiency or certain ways how things are being done these days.
I think there's always the case in Asia of service being downgraded as a capacity, be it working in a restaurant, being work at a hotel. It's not considered to be the trendiest thing, and I think that's a sign of the times too as well. And I think our industry has to present itself to be entrepreneurial, to show people opportunities, not to take orders from above. And I think that's the main thing. As an industry, we failed in that, to keep people in the system working through. And people say they want to go into tech, they want to go into crypto, they want to go into other industries because it's lighter work. They're not having to deal with all these problems all the day, and there's not structure. I think we need to reinvite the that career path where people want to be in this business because they enjoy people. and the dignity of that. And I think that's really the key is why do you want to be in the business? Is because you enjoy talking to people, you enjoy serving people, you enjoy doing that. But right now, that's a lost art. I think that's an art going down and down the totem pole. It's something we really have to attempt to get people back to like that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Bill. And just for all the viewers, if you have any questions or comments, please write down. We love to hear your feedback. And if there are questions, we love to get your questions also. So over to you, Abid.
Thank you, Sam. Bill, you talked about the labor costs, and certainly in these gorgeous, sprawling resorts throughout Asia, labor has been dealt with. You threw people at problems, and in what might not have been well thought through. Obviously, the shortages in labor are going to force the issue that whole operating model is looked at. You also talked about the service industry and hospitality industry, and one of the things in mature markets that has occurred is when institutional money gets involved in it, it almost takes the focus to a profitability and away from some of the other things. How do you think Asia is transitioning with that?
I think it's not. I think it's yet to be seen. I think they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to adopt Western practices and say, again, this is, again, I mean, the sad thing is people don't look at the pay, they look at payroll as an onerous thing and a overhead, but they don't see the opportunity of using the people proactively. I mean, I think it's interesting too, because I've seen now, I go to Twin Palms here in Phuket, and I see they created something called the Lazy Coconut. They took their engineering staff, they took their food and beverage staff, and created a whole new beach outlet with their existing staff. And I think that's what excites people. And people are now seeing a little bit of opportunities by saying, we need more flexible staff. We can move around the place and just, not just this general regime of the industry, which is almost military in terms of its rankings, everything else. I think that's going to be certainly it has to come back to profit as well. And anybody who buys a hotel is going to have to understand that, labor and electricity or labor and utilities, these are the big expenses of this type of property. And we're probably going to start changing new hotels when they go on the pipeline. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of legacy assets which are going to struggle with this.
Well, Bill, thank you for those insights. Please stay with us. We'll have you back shortly. At this point, I'd like to bring up Manoj Mehta with Naked Group. Manoj, thanks for taking the time and being with us.
Hi, Abid. Glad to be with you and Sam.
Well, Manoj, tell us a little bit about the Chinese market and recovery of the Chinese market. What are you seeing since you are heavily vested in that market?
So, right now, if there is the story of two worlds, that's playing in China. Rest of the world, Asia and the west part of the world is seeing one side of the story, and China is right now a safe but a bubble, and what that has done is created a very, very strong market for domestic consumption. So people are essentially, I'm going to use the word loosely, are not allowed to leave China, and those who are coming in have very strict quarantine requirements, etc. So 1.3, 1.4 billion people who otherwise would have gone to Phukets and Tokyos and France and Australia and US and what have you, they have nowhere else to go but to find places within China. So we are seeing an extremely high demand in short distance travel places, and it started very quickly after the COVID-19 last year. We started to see this demand around April of 2020, and with the exception of one or two outbreaks that happened in China, and all of a sudden we saw hundreds of cancellations. So with the exception of those 2 or 3 incidents that happened over the last 8-10 months, the demand has been more robust than it has been in the past.
Well, for markets where there is a domestic demand and population enough to sustain travel, it definitely works. And China is probably at top of the heap from domestic travel point of view. Are you seeing any difference in buying behavior? Are people using OTAs? We were just talking to Bill about that, but the giant behemoth of C-Trip, which has been very actively used throughout, is that still common, or are there other platforms that are now being utilized for domestic travel?
So C-Trip, as Bill was also mentioning, likes of Booking.com or C-Trip, they of course have millions and millions and millions of people on their platform, and that's the power of C-Trip. So there are hotels and resorts that heavily rely on platforms like C-Trip, which are also struggling a lot right now, because half of C-Trip's business was selling tickets to Chinese people to go abroad. So that business is essentially dead, and a lot of C-Trip's business was also inbound travel. That is also dead. So C-Trip is obviously focusing a lot on promoting their domestic business. And to that point, not just C-Trip, but Meituan Dianping or Fliggy, which is the Alibaba's travel division, they are all heavily engaging in trying to grab the market share by doing all sorts of gimmicky live streams where the bosses dress up as Chinese kings and queens and trying to attract guests to buy essentially heavily discounted deals to try and shore up some of the business that they have lost on the international side. Having said that, and speaking more from a naked perspective, we have right from the very beginning when we were quite small, we are still quite small, but much bigger than what we used to be. 70-80% of our bookings actually come from our own channel. We only rely on C-Trips and likes. Very few of them, we don't do any discounters, etc. For less than 30% of our bookings. So when guests are looking for a destination, and if you are able to create a brand where people are actually looking for that hotel, even if because of their buying habits they may go to C-Trip, but the search is being done for your brand, and C-Trip just happens to be a very convenient platform, and then you need to figure out how you move those customers directly to buy from you, because then you own the customer rather than likes of C-Trip or Meituan or somebody else controlling the guests.
Fair enough. Manoj, I'm going to...
One quick point I want.
Yes,
Wanted to add is you asked about other platforms. So the famous TikTok or the Chinese version of it. They are starting to realize that they also have access to millions of people. So how they can convert those funny videos into click and make a booking. So there are other platforms are also starting to realize that if people are on my platform, and if I can somehow seduce them into making a booking somewhere, I want a piece of that action. So that is starting to happen a lot in this platform economy that is obviously growing a lot in China.
So Manoj, I look forward to seeing your song and dance promoting Naked Group on TikTok very soon. Let me turn it over to Sam, and I'll be back with you in a moment. Sam.
Thank you, Manoj, also for being at the show, and I also like to entice all the viewers to have questions or comments for Manoj to write down in the comments. We really appreciate your contribution here. Yeah, Manoj, I'm quite interested about the domestic market, and admitting I don't know much about it except what I read. What are the things now, considering that the Chinese market and therefore China has come out of the pandemic, if you may say so? What is it excites me at the moment? I mean, they don't travel abroad, but they travel domestically. What are the things that they are looking for now, which might have changed since last year, or if any?
Right. So one of the things that happened almost as a direct outcome of the pandemic is that people have started to pay a lot more attention to, not just in China, but in my opinion, globally, on health and wellness and being together with family and friends. So it's not just good enough to go to a site and take a photo and post that and say I was at Eiffel Tower or I was at the Great Wall, but the time that the guests that are spending together with their friends and family in a healthy environment. So just some anecdotal examples I'll share with you, that since the pandemic, and as China has come out of it, or at least to a certain extent has come out of it, in our resorts, which are fairly spread out, we are seeing more and more people volunteering to take a walk to their villas or their units rather than using the golf buggy, because they want to be part of the nature. They're doing a lot more trekking. They are enjoying the nature a lot more than we used to see pre-pandemic. So the main difference that we're seeing is the experiences are becoming a lot more important, and health and wellness is becoming a big part of their portfolio of things that attract the Chinese people.
Yeah, very good. That's very interesting. My final question to you is, before I hand over to Abid, is about technology. I learned that China is probably one of the most advanced nations relating to technology and apps and so on. I have seen some hotel chains that have taken it maybe to the extreme level of robotics and so on. But where do you see the initiatives, and where is the technology going, so it doesn't lose the sense of the human touch that we should still have as we're in hospitality? So are there certain apps that you think are relevant, or are they over the top? Considering the pandemic, we had the keyless access and you have remote controls on your device, but anything else that you may have seen or are driving within your own group?
Right. So I think, Sam, when technology is a great tool, but oftentimes, and I think you're alluding to it, that it gets used for the sake of technology and not sake for the guest experience or increasing efficiency and improving guest experiences. So, for example, having a curtain that opens when you say open curtain, to us, it doesn't really mean much. We would rather people get up and be active and open the curtain. But there are technology, or for that matter, a robot that delivers a glass of water, and people do it just so that it's a gimmick. It's I would rather somebody come to my room, hands me a bottle of water, and I have a little bit of an interaction with that person. So the human touch that you are talking about, we should not forget as we chase technology. But there are meaningful changes that are starting to happen in the space of technology, not just from a guest experience point of view, but both operations, where the PMSs start to give you intelligent information that Sam is due to arrive in the room at 2:00, because that information is there in some system, and he likes his room at 20 degrees Celsius. So the PMS can turn on the AC, so that you without a human intervention, we've given you something that you prefer. Similarly, on the infrastructure side, intelligent lights, intelligent security cameras that actually report that, by the way, I'm not working, you need to fix me. Because the security camera, often 9 out of 10 times, the day you needed the film from that security camera, that's the day you find out it wasn't working. So there is lots happening, which is not necessarily hospitality specific, but there are real beneficial applications. Guest experience side, operations, back of office, as well as the infrastructure, cameras that reporting that this old person has collapsed, and a 911 call can be initiated. So there are lots of very, very exciting things that are happening, and in the coming weeks, months, and years, you'll see Naked launching some of these.
Excellent. I'll be looking for them. So thanks very much, Manoj. It was very great answers to those questions. So over to you, Abid.
Well, thank you, Sam. Manoj, technology adoption, I guess, it becomes an expectation when consumers are using some of these things at home. In hospitality, typically has been reticent in adopting technology, but we'll have to see if this voice activated devices become common in hotels because a lot of households are using this. One last question before we bring up our next guest. What's the future for Naked Group? What do you see moving down 5 years from now? How many different resorts you would like to have, and what does the future hold for you?
I think for Naked Group, if I can look into the crystal ball of next 5 years, we would have anywhere between 15 to 20 resorts north of China with skiing facilities, south of China on the beaches, but always in the stunning natural environment. Each resort that we want to launch, we want to make sure that there is something unique about that place that people want to visit, and that resort itself is the destination. We don't want guests to go to our resort as a place to sleep. uh, our resort is the destination which is full of unique experiences, and bringing lifestyle that Chinese people are. There is a 300 to 500 million Chinese people who are coming into the middle class, and this middle class is just starving for new lifestyle experiences, be it local Chinese experiences or be it global experiences. So our next 5 years are going to be focused on delivering these lifestyle experiences in stunning natural environments to Chinese people.
Superb. Well, thank you for being with us, Manoj. Please stick around. We'll have you back. But at this point, I would like to bring up Michael Piro. Michael, thanks for your time.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Very well, Michael. Your long experience in Vietnam. Tell us, what are you seeing in travel trends from Vietnamese perspective? Anything new on the horizon, other than, of course, your own brand?
Well, I think a lot of the things that Manoj mentioned that he's seeing in China, we're seeing very similar trends on a obviously on a much smaller scale. If you look at Vietnam, like I'm based in Saigon right now, where we just opened a hotel. Obviously this was a market that would have been consistently running at 70-75% plus year around. That's now sitting at 10 to 15%. So obviously the impact, the loss of international tourists has had an enormous impact on the market. I mean, looking back at 2019, we were on track to hit about 18. We hit about 18 million, a little more than 18 million in 2020. We were going to kind of break through that magic number of 20 million international arrivals, and obviously that's been put to a total halt. Needless to say, the market has been affected dramatically. But there is some light spots that we have seen, similar to what Manoj mentioned. We're seeing, basically any resorts within a 2-hour commute, a drive from Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City. Some of them are, experiencing better results than they did pre-COVID. So I think some of the points Manoj mentioned again, that people are now experience driven. People are now have a heightened sense of appreciation for nature, for being active. I think that time that everyone spent locked in their house, and some people still are today, really helped people understand the value of the freedom they had before, and the pursuit of experiences. I think that's really what's driving our in a meaningful way.
Well, we always desire what we don't have. So now that we've been locked up, we want to be out and about in the worst possible way. Michael, you talked about the international arrivals, and Vietnam has been very heavily reliant on that. Unfortunately, COVID has stopped that very quickly. These borders should open soon, and hopefully we'll be back. But is there domestic demand? To what extent can the domestic travel be encouraged within Vietnam?
Domestic has been relatively resilient. We've actually seen in some points, like in the middle of last year in August, we actually saw domestic travel perform at a rate higher than it did in 2019. So I guess people being stuck in the country, the pent-up demand growing. So we actually saw obviously an influx of domestic travel. So basically what we're seeing is, every 3 months, people get very comfortable with travel. There are some rumblings of a potential outbreak. Travel drops down to zero. A couple weeks later, once people feel comfortable that that the market or that it's safe to travel again, then we start to see things pick up. But all in all, if you look at Vietnam, they've done an absolutely incredible job containing the virus. We only had just over 2,000 cases in total, which is, probably out of the, kind of main countries in Southeast Asia is probably the best performing, only 35 deaths in total. So I think the country has really shown, what it can do with a single party rule, where, the authoritarian government just really has grabbed the bull by the horns here and managed the situation quite effectively.
The feeder markets into Vietnam, of course, were South Korea and China pre-pandemic, and there were lots and lots of visitors into China from those markets, in addition to some of the long haul markets. With the recovery in those markets, do you see sort of a bilateral arrangements being made between the government so that the borders between these different countries can open up for Vietnam?
I see that at some point, but my assumption will be Vietnam will be the last to move. They're extremely conservative, and that's why you can see that the spread of the virus has been so well contained here. The Vietnamese are very adept at dealing with crisis in a very strict manner. There's zero tolerance for anyone really deviating from the rules here that are set to regulate or to mitigate the spread of the virus. So what we're seeing is that the kind of the strength of the government and the authority of the government is really helping to drive that. But I do not see those markets opening up anytime soon. I think there will be select cases, and we see a little bit of it. That's FDI driven. Samsung is responsible for like 20 billion in GDP for the country. If they need a plane of technicians to come in, they will still get them in through a very strict procedure. But other than that, we are totally shut down. Again, similar to China.
Very interesting. Michael, let's talk about Indochina's entry into brand versus dealing with other brands. Obviously, you guys have developed some of the best hotels in Vietnam for the longest time, but now you have just launched your own brand. Walk us through some of the discussions that you had that led to start of your own brand.
Well, I think at the core of it, we have always developed things at kind of the ultra luxury level. So the first property we developed in Vietnam was the Four Seasons Nam Hai. Then we did the Six Senses, Con Bao, Hyatt Regency, Da Nang, etc. And so we were always kind of focused on that 1% or the top 1 or 2% in the country. And we said, it's great. We wanted to create these trophies for Vietnam to help put Vietnam's tourism on the map. But then we started to see this development of a really upwardly mobile middle class, and the upspring of low cost carriers. And then if you look at in 2019, International arrivals were about 18 million, but domestic travel was about 70 million. So we said, how can we get a piece of that market, and bring the level of attention to detail, bring the standards that we've learned and developed in the luxury space, and really bring that at a price point that almost anyone could afford. And so that was kind of the mission we set out to achieve. And the beginning of that mission started with a thorough review of, we met with all the major operators you would expect. We studied all the kind of select service brands, etc., and kind of how we kind of evolved into the point where we're like, we looked at these brands and we felt that they were a bit generic they didn't represent the tenacity of Vietnam. And like, I've always had, an interest in branding and the marketing side of our business. And I think, to me, I looked around Vietnam and I'm like, if you need to draw inspiration to build a brand, I'm like, I could not think of a better place that has so much energy, so much history, so much culture. 2/3 of the population are under the age of 35. So there's amazing energy here. You have the kind of the rich past, with 1 foot in the rice paddies and 1 foot in a hyper co-working cafe on an iPhone, and like, so you get this amazing contrast here. So we thought, given we've had such a long successful journey in Vietnam, why don't we celebrate Vietnam in the creation of a new brand and develop a brand for Vietnamese people, by Vietnamese people. And that's really what we set out to do. And we spent a lot of time studying other brands around the world, and then decided that, we felt like we were kind of trying to fit a square into a circular peg or whatever, and that the best thing to do would be to create a brand for this market. And so that journey started about 5 years ago. And on March 24th, we opened our first hotel in Saigon in District 1 with 236 rooms. And we have about 8 additional hotels under construction, or various stages of the approval process that'll see us having about close to 3,000 rooms in the next 24 months. So it's quite an exciting and bullish rollout plan. And that would see us with a national footprint from down to Saigon. So yeah, that's today. It's an incredible journey.
That's fantastic, and congratulations for the launch and opening of your first hotel. I'll turn it over to Sam here in a bit, but talk a little bit about opening a hotel in the midst of a pandemic. What was that like? Did you delay the opening in any way, or were you focused on a particular date and you held to that date?
No, we were supposed to open in July 2020, and we ended up opening in March 2021. There was just, every time we'd get geared up to launch, there would be a new outbreak, a new lockdown, etc. And so we just kept getting pushed back. And then at a certain point, we said, we just got to open the hotel. I mean, we may as well have a year or whatever cutting our teeth in a tough market, and we can be kind of, born in fire. And that's kind of what I like doing. I'm like, let's learn in the toughest environment possible. And when we get through this, everything else will seem easy. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. And I said, let's just get it open and we'll deal with it as it comes. We've already invested a lot of money. There's no sense in waiting. So, a lot of people looked at us like we were kind of crazy. They're like, man, you haven't opened yet, then stay closed. And we said, no, we're building a long-term brand. I don't mind a little bit of pain here for a little while, because our vision is for 20 hotels and we just got to get started. So, it was quite a bold move, but overall, I'm happy that we did it.
Well, that's fantastic, Michael. Let me turn it over to Sam here, and I'll be back with you in a moment.
Thank you, Abid.
Thanks.
Yeah, Michael, quite interesting. I mean, Vietnam is a fascinating country, and the culture, obviously, as you mentioned, is very long and rich and fascinating. Since you're taking the bold step of starting your own brand, can you just briefly very briefly describe the DNA of the brand. What makes it unique, and how does it fit into what you call the Vietnamese sensation or the experience?
Sure. So I guess our brand is some of the kind of fundamentals of it is it's a celebration of Vietnamese culture. Everything we do is about promoting Vietnamese products. It's all local craft beer, all local artists commissioned for all the artwork in the hotel. All the food and beverage, where possible, is all locally sourced from local entrepreneurs. So again, like in Vietnam, there's been this constant culture over, in the time I've been here to be like, let's bring the West to Vietnam. Let's bring the West to Vietnam. Let's get burgers. Let's get this. Let's get that. And then we said, no, we like eating spring rolls. We like eating pho. Why do we need to sell burgers when we love eating pho? Why do we need to pretend we're something that we're not? Why don't we just celebrate who we are, how we are? And if we like to sit on plastic stools and drink beer, we have plastic stools here to drink beer outside. That's okay. Another thing is that it's been a very subservient hotel culture, very much, kind of the colonial era hanging over here, sir, sir, sir. We've done away with all of that. Everyone's wearing T-shirts. Everyone is addressed by their first name. All of our staff are what we refer to as guides. There's only one department, and it's the front of house team. We have a outsourced housekeeping and a front of house team, and that's it. There are, including the housekeeping staff, 50 staff running 236 rooms. And so I think, it's just what we try to do, we replace the business center with co-working. We have 24-hour bar. We have unlimited cold brew coffee. We have 24-hour stays. When you check in at 8 p.m., you check out the next day at 8 p.m. Our room service menu is a delivery menu with all the hottest restaurants in town. We're fully clued in. Every guide is treated like a concierge. Everyone has to be plugged into the music events, the bar openings, the restaurant launches. So what we try to do is, we have no we have no ballrooms, we have no rooftop bar. Our highest margin is realized on the room sale, so that's what we try to do. Realize the room sale, and then become your amazing tour guide so that you experience the city like a local, like us. So the best coffee shops down a little alley. You know where to get the best haircut or fade in town. You'll be sitting next to the best tattoo artist at breakfast. You're totally plugged into the city. So we really opened up all of our relationships, all of our favorite places, and we curated that into the whole Wink experience. And people, it's nothing like anyone has ever, in Vietnam has experienced.
Great.
People tell us.
My final question is then. The way you describe the DNA is exactly how I would like to dream to be in a place like that. But then the look of the hotel, does each location have a very distinct, different architectural style, or are you going with a very?
No.
What is your approach to the architecture and interior?
Oh, we're going very much cookie cutter. Everyone is more or less replicated. Some, depending on the GFA allowed, have more retail, have some retail components. Some have a rooftop bar. Some have little bits of more amenities if it's a slightly more leisure location. But generally, they're all exactly more or less the same. We want people to know that whether you're in Haiphong, Hanoi, Da Nang, Can Tho, that you're going to get the same Wink experience. I want it to be like Starbucks on every corner. And really, we're not going after the big box. Like, I'm not going after Novotel. I'm not going after Ibis. I don't even see them as my competitors. 83% of the Vietnamese market is mom and pop shops. So I want to be the super chic mom and pop's local place where locals will choose to stay with me rather than that white labeled, family operated mini hotel down the street. So that's where most of the Vietnamese are staying. And I'm just trying to aggregate that demand and push it all into one hotel.
Great. I mean, I think that you're doing the right thing. So, well, I think I think I would recommend for the viewers to keep an eye on Wink Hotels. You're definitely making a mark in Vietnam. So, well, thank you very much for those answers, and over to you, Abid.
Michael, how do you think your own organization would evolve? You built hotels, but let other brands manage them. Now you're coming into management yourself. How do you think your own organization will change as a result of that? And what do you think are going to be the challenges embarking on this new venture?
Oh, I mean, anyone who's done management knows that every day is a challenge. I mean, shifting from being a developer to an operator it's two different lives almost. A development is a very linear path. It has a start date, it has an end date, and you're like, all right, we're done, hand it over to the operator, and we just become guests at the hotel and enjoying it and sit in some quarterly budget meetings. But with this, it's the day you open, you're just starting and it never stops. It is a constant push. There's no turning it off. There's no topping out ceremony done. It's just a constant grind. And it's definitely something like I've had to learn very differently from, yelling at contractors to meet deadlines to like sitting with food and beverage staff and explaining to them gently how they can improve their dish or whatever. It's really been an amazing experience for me to kind of learn this side of the business. My respect, hoteliers, has after this experience, because from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, it's just people come, they sleep in the room, they eat something, but it's like, once you see everything that goes into this business to make it all tick, it's
absolutely.
It requires enormous passion and energy, and people should thank us all.
Well, our industry there are lots of details involved in it, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. One last question before we bring everybody else into it. The future for Indochina and Wink, where do you see this brand going? And would you consider going outside Vietnam, or is it predominantly focused on Vietnam?
I see Wink getting up to about 20 hotels in Vietnam. The benefit that we have is that on our development side of the business, we have a joint venture with Kajima, who I believe are the fourth largest Japanese construction company, but they're also the largest Japanese international development and investment company. So we have a joint venture with them. So we can roll out very quickly because we don't have to deal with any other owners. We're the developer and the owner of the brand. So, I mean, looking forward, we look to roll out 20 hotels, and then at some point, hopefully, there's obviously going to be the propco holding all the underlying assets, and then we'll have the opco, and then, there'll be hopefully some really good opportunities for some liquidity events or listing or whatever the case. But this is fundamental to the future of Indochina Capital and will be our core platform moving forward.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, thank you so much for that. Sam, if it's okay, let's bring everybody back together. Bill, you had talked a bit about brand managed versus owner managed versus third-party managed hotels. As you know, in some of the mature markets, particularly in the US, third-party management platforms are very popular. Now, it's gaining some grounds in Europe. Do you see that coming in Asia? Do you see that more people would be attracted to a third-party manager as opposed to a brand manager?
Sure, it's actually good. Actually, that we're talking about brands now. Now, Manoj there has a great T-shirt. Live Naked and Michael Piro. One thing we didn't talk about before is if anybody wants a Live Naked shirt or a Wink shirt, I think Michael already said he'll send me one. So anybody who would like a free shirt also, just put in the comment section, send your name and address in the comment section, and these guys will send you free T-shirts. Michael, Manoj, extra large, okay? Just for the brand, okay? I'll be sending in my address. Certainly, without a doubt, white label is going to be coming, because at the end of the day, if you talk to somebody who runs a franchise or something in Asia, they say, I can make more money than the brand can managing it. That's a big talk and everywhere else. But at the end of the day, again, if you go back in your you're managing white label, you're managing a franchise, you're not spending 50% of your time talking to head office and reforecasting every third day. So I think in terms of efficiency and reacting, I think that's where the opportunity are. And I think owners today are going to want that. And we're going to see the same slide in the US and everything else. It's interesting because there's always this thing that brands outperform non-brands. But if I go to the US, there's more white label operators than there are management companies. And the US companies would always say, but we have better RevPAR. But it's the white label guys who also drive that as well. They drive performance as well. So I think in all fairness, Asia's catching up with the rest of the world, and it's about time.
Well, at least in US, or some of the lenders force you to have professional management companies before they would even give you some money. So I think that's what forces either a brand or a third-party operator. With technology and distribution the way it is, I think a lot of the business acquisition, the field has been leveled, so people can perform fairly well even in independent environments. Manoj, some of the initiatives that China might have launched, I was reading that they allowed duty-free shopping and the limits of duty-free shopping to go up. For example, in Hainan, it went up to 100,000 yuan, so that people did not have to go out. Do you think some of those initiatives would stick around? And how would that impact the outbound Chinese travel once the pandemic is over?
So I think, Abid, the example that you shared or you mentioned, Hainan. Hainan is a strategy that is being rolled out by Beijing very openly, and it has been announced that by 2025, Hainan will be closed. That means no more people can come in from China into Hainan. So Hainan is sort of like a getaway place for Chinese people. It looks like it's outside China, but it is obviously controlled and managed by China. So this whole Hainan test, what it does, what we need to think about is what it would do to Hong Kong. Because right now, Hong Kong has that space where Chinese people have to get a permit to go to Hong Kong. They used to go there for shopping, and these holidays, trips to Hong Kong, would those trips be replaced by trips to Hainan with a lot more lucrative and very attractive policies, including very, very attractive personal as well as corporate taxation. So Hainan is definitely there to stay because Beijing is behind it, and they will see it through. Whether there will be other places like Hainan in China, that I doubt.
Fair enough. Bill, you heard Michael and Manoj talk about the future development and supply. From an overall continental perspective, what do you think is the impact on new supply coming onto the market, and is that still forging ahead?
We're still seeing supply. I mean, just read the newspapers and see the pipeline. You know, again, this isn't 1997. There's still liquidity in the marketplace. You still have people. If people are under development or under construction now, they're probably going to go ahead. It's going to slow the broader pipeline, sure. If people are doing projects now and perhaps they're in planning stages, that's going to be stunted. We're going to see this is not going to be a 12-month recovery. This is not going to be a 6-month. This is going to be a 3-4 year full recovery back to where we're going. So I think certainly the pipeline, and I think it also gives an opportunity to recreate hotels too, and say let's renovate perhaps and repurpose products or change products which are there as well. So I think there'll be a lot of appetite for that. That's going to slow down generally. We can't keep it this pace. Nothing goes in a straight line forever.
Fair enough. Michael, for you, are you looking to retrofit some of the buildings, or is Wink going to be all new build, or would you consider adaptive reuse?
No, our kind of footprint and the way that we put the rooms together and kind of the efficiencies that we need to achieve with our 16 square meter rooms and very specific structural design to get the bays right. It just doesn't, it'll cost us more probably to rip a building apart and do that. So everything that we're doing is greenfield. But the benefit is when we wrote the business plan for Wink, we knew that sourcing land is one of the biggest challenges in Vietnam. So we developed a business plan around like what we refer to as an urban infill strategy. So the Wink product is designed that it can sit on anywhere from 800 square meters to 1,200 square meters. So small sites. So these, we noticed in the market that we could find these sites in the city because they're too small for the big, massive local developers, but a little bit too big for small families to hold on to these, 10, $15 million pieces of land. And so, we've managed to buy like extremely good sites in central locations throughout the country. And yeah, we're just going ground up, really building everything out from the beginning.
Sounds good. Sam, anything from you, or should I keep going?
Well, keep going for the moment. You're on the road.
Well, just one more question, and I'll turn it over to you. In Manoj, from your perspective, long-term concerns for our industry, particularly from China perspective. Do you see anything major roadblocks ahead of us that we need to be aware of?
Well, I'll speak from China perspective, and the one thing that the industry has to look out for, and some of that has already happened. When things get hot in China, they get red hot. So right now, with this growth, the domestic growth in the tourism, there is a massive drive to let's create more opportunities for people to be able to do short distance travel, and everybody and their uncle wants to jump into that. And so there is a possibility of oversupply and underutilized or mismanaged properties coming online, and hopefully, people think before they put their investment dollars and do things in a way that is actually fully thought through. That's probably the only thing that I would watch out for.
Fair enough.
May I have a question? Yeah, just one question. I want to just open this up to the group. Like, I guess one thing that no one touched on, I'm a bit surprised, is we talked a bit about technology, we talked a bit about HR, but what we didn't talk much about is like the kind of meeting point where you increase your technology slightly and reduce your headcount, which is kind of how we're working right now. Like, we're pretty reliant on technology. Everyone's wired up with iPads, every single person. Like, I could check you in on my phone if I was standing in the lobby. Like, I could fully check you into the hotel. So we've managed to bring our, because of this situation, I mean, Wink was designed like that anyway, but even in other businesses I'm involved in, I have restaurants, bars, nightclubs and stuff. We've had to strip down, learn how to operate more efficiently, learn how to be leaner. Do you guys see long-term that the industry will just, say average headcounts were 1.5 staff per room? Do you see that coming down and staying down as people use technology and just realize during times of austerity that they could survive without so many people? That's what I'm realizing. I'm like, why did I have all these people sitting around for so long? And I'm like, I realized on my MacBook Pro, I can make an advertisement for a room sale and myself, and I don't need someone there. And all these little things that we're learning that we can be so much more efficient because there's no one here to do it. We can't afford to have all the people, so you have to learn. So do you guys think that like that reduced headcount is here to stay, or do you think as soon as business levels pick up, people will just go back to kind of the fat old org charts that we're used to that are highly structured and top down and blah, 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 blah. We're moving towards flatter organizations, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, guys.
I think, Michael, something I see is certainly, yeah. I think certainly, certainly in select service, limited service, you look at when Holiday Inn Express came to certain parts of Asia, and they said, we're going to do a back office and everything else. It's ridiculous that you have to have, if you got a 100-key hotel, you've got to have a financial controller. These are absurd things. Anywhere else, go to a Starbucks, they can run 20 shops with one operation. It doesn't make any sense. This is such a backward industry. So I think sooner or later people are going to say it, and I think people are going to be afraid about what happened. They're like, they don't want to hire, so they're going to be forced to do things. But doing things, we can run our hotels from our homes as well. You can do certain things. People, sales.
I didn't want to say it, but
Yeah, yeah.
I've never even worked in a hotel, so I just come in and completely new to all this, watching how this has been done for 100 years, and I'm like, is this seriously how you guys work? Like the, the head of, the head of housekeeping calls his assistant of housekeeping, who calls the housekeeper, who goes and does, like everything is so structured. Everyone is so entitled in their management roles and everything, and I'm just like, they're looking at me like I'm crazy as I'm knocking all these walls down. But I'm thinking like this industry could definitely be saving a lot of money on personnel.
I think
So,
one interesting
Michael,
point, just to jump on that real quick, would be
share an
that,
example.
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Yep. I guess there is a little bit of a delay in my voice, so I'll share an example, Michael, with you. Slightly different from hospitality, but we used to call it hospitality for work. So Naked used to own a business called Naked Hub, which was a co-working company which we sold to WeWork. And we used to manage a building, 9,000 square meters of a building with 4 to 8 people, 9 floors, and heavily technology. So of course, the people business is, we're not going to go down to 9 people, but there is certainly room for massive improvements using technology, not reducing service. So I think Bill was giving an example of Holiday Inn Express. I see that it's as a slightly wrong direction, that I'll charge you less because I'm giving you less service. But with the proper use of technology, you can actually increase the experience. It's a better experience with less people. When more people are involved, more chances of things going wrong. So how do you use the technology and system in a cohesive manner? So we are actually looking at our future resorts. We will not have a check-in counter because the check-in will be done. Why an airline can do the check-in online, and hotel, that's almost non-existent right now. And we've actually recently launched. We haven't promoted it, but we have launched an online check-in where all you can check in, you can get your keys, you can get everything on a mini app. And once that thing is fully rolled out, I don't need the counter, which means I don't need the people standing behind the counter and hiding behind the counter. I need people up front asking guests, what would you like to do today?
Thank you very much. So it's about, you can do this with 10 engaged people. You don't need 20 people opening doors, carrying bags around, nodding their heads, standing around. Like what we're doing is really focusing on running casting events to get guides that are actually like actors on the set that are bringing the environment to life, not just filling the lobby with a bunch of yes men, which is like 90% of the hotels. It's like,
Bill, you were going to say something.
I think one of the outcomes we'll see is real estate returns, and people looking at, now that we're talking about these behemoth hotels, the amount of function space, all this dead space. And I think we're going to go back and start looking at real estate. Anybody who's worked in a hotel and looks at a F&B outlet compared to some guy who runs an outlet at a mall where he's paying 5 times as much rent, understands there's no chef's office, understands that when somebody's doing the menu, they're sitting at the bar doing it. They understand they're paying rent. I challenge any hotel group when they go back and you've got, that entire back of house of a restaurant. I think real estate is the best measure, because when you're looking at the efficient use of spaces now for hotels, you have to look at the real estate return. If I don't develop a hotel, what could I do with that real estate? If I have all this bloody space extra, how is that going to be utilized? And hotel guys have been living, certainly in Asia, they're fat cats in terms of demanding all these brand standards with this much space. But now you also have to be accountable and say, well, if you're not using that space, what's the real estate return? Because if you don't have it, we'll take it and do something else with it. I think it's a real estate return model that works really going forward as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think all these different markets use some of the different lenses, quite candidly, to evaluate it, but more business principles are going to have to be taken into account. A lot of times, some of the investments are done for vanity reasons and not necessarily on sound business principles, but that all has to change as markets mature, as money markets mature and capital stacks have to be looked at differently. All these things come into play. Sam, I think we have kind of reached the end of it, but please.
Yeah, we didn't go into a discussion about priorities, but I just want to have a quick answer from you Michael, Manoj particularly. Where do you see your priority in terms of when you plan your hotels, that it has to be sustainable and also ecological, of course has to be functional, but those two areas of sustainable, ecological, where does it sit in your list of priorities?
I could go first if
So
you'd like.
with a company,
Yeah, Manoj. Sure.
Go ahead.
with a company that has name Naked, we have to be sustainable. We have to be living. So, but we want to use sustainability and ecology as a platform to create experiences. We don't want to. We are not tree huggers. We are sustainable business. We create sustainability of economy, culture, history, environment, but all of that is a platform to create unique experiences that people are looking to enhance their lifestyles.
How about you, Michael?
For us, it's ours is a bit more. Yeah, I guess I am a bit of a tree hugger. All our hotels are LEED Gold certified. Zero single-use plastic in all the hotels. Every garbage can, tissue holder, tray is made out of reused plastic. We linked up with a group that takes plastic out of the ocean, melts it down, and builds things. So all of our every room, all the amenity trays, everything are all made with reused plastic. So a lot of the social responsibility and donations and stuff we do are related to climate change and whatnot. So yeah, for us, it's a fundamental pillar in our brand, and we think people are becoming extremely conscious of this now and really value and respect, I think, the work that we went through to do that. I mean, and little things like, you know, a snack or whatever, I had to convince suppliers, I'm like, I can't take it because it's plastic. I'm sorry, I can't. You have to figure out a way to give it to me in paper or whatever. So like, it was a really intense battle to maintain that standard, but I'm very happy that we did.
Thank you.
So, Sam, unless there is something else, I think we've gone past our allocated time. Bill Barnett with C9 Hotel Group, Manoj Mehta with Naked Group, and Michael Piro with the Indochina Capital. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for all your insights. Really appreciate you being here. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Abid. I also like to thank all the panelists. It has been a great discussion we had today. I also like to thank all the live viewers who joined us. Particularly, I want to mention Aurelio Girodo, who is in Doha. He is our friend who comes and visits on usually every show. So glad that you joined us this time. But I also like to thank all the replay viewers, because we are now featured on, besides YouTube, LinkedIn Live, and also on Hospitality Talks Facebook page. And if you prefer to listen while you're walking, having your evening walk, we will be also featured on as a podcast. So this episode will be as a podcast also, because we have also new friends who prefer the audio version of it. So looking forward to welcoming you again. We have another show coming up very soon. So with these words, just take care and have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, everybody.
On behalf of the industry, thank you guys for putting this all on. Thank you.